Meanwhile, I'm always intrigued by what's not covered, what's not being covered. There's a scandal involving Michael Flynn. That has barely, of course, been a blip on the radar, hasn't it? Where yesterday, a court threw out the charges against Michael Flynn. And you know what's really appalling? The guy running for president could very well be in this up to his eyeballs. According to court papers that were filed yesterday, Joe Biden appears to have personally raised the idea of investigating Michael Flynn for potentially violating the obscure, never-used Logan Act when he talked to the Russian ambassador at the time. These were previously sealed documents. If the media was worth a damn, pardon my language, I'm in a bad mood today. If they were worth a damn, there'd be a big front page story that reveals facts, like this one. The then FBI director, James Comey, acknowledged during a meeting that involved Sally Yates, possibly Susan Rice, that General Flynn's conversation with Sergei Kislyak his conversations, quote, appear legit, according to the federal court filing out of Washington, D.C. that were just revealed. This was revealed in handwritten notes that were prepared by this disgraced ex-FBI agent, Peter Strzok. Flynn's lawyers are referring to this as stunning and exculpatory evidence. But of course, now the government has dropped the case, dropped the charges. But listen to this. This is where it matters. A partially blacked out copy of Peter Strzok's notes is attached to the filing and includes a mention that appears to say, this is scrawled, this is like chicken scratch, but it appears to say VP, Logan Act. The lawyer said, according to Peter Strzok's notes, it appears that Vice President Joe Biden personally raised the idea of the Logan Act. That became the pretext to investigate General Flynn. Now, Biden plays total ignorance. He didn't know anything about the Michael Flynn investigation. George Stephanopoulos asked him about it on May 12th. He said, I know nothing about these moves to investigate Michael Flynn. Then later, when Biden was confronted with evidence that he did, he claimed he misunderstood the question. He said, I was aware that there was, that they asked for an investigation, but that's all I know about it, and I don't think anything else. The Logan Act. The Logan Act. Incidentally, Strzok's notes, which were written on January 4th, 2017, were previously withheld from General Flynn and his lawyers until finally having to turn them over on January 23rd. According to the New York Post, where I've been citing a lot of this information, Joe Biden's campaign didn't immediately respond to a request for comment. It's probably because this reporter from the New York Post is the only person who asked. Because I don't think the Washington Post or the New York Times or CNN or any of them are clamoring to cover this scandal, which many believe strongly makes Watergate look like a walk in the park. It's astounding how the media can control a narrative. 1-800-655-MIKE. 800-655-6453. 19 minutes before the hour here in the ReliefFactor.com studios. And of course, everybody's worried. I had such a great conversation with a dear friend of mine the other night, not a Trump fan, but he said, you know what? Wild horses couldn't prevent me from voting for him in November. We need to have Donald Trump. We need to have the Republicans win in November. Every poll has Trump underwater. Every poll suggests a landslide. Where have we heard that before? You got to keep the faith here. You got to stay strong, and you've got to have your eyes wide open, and you have to listen. If you're inclined not to vote on November 3rd, listen to what what are facts. If you hear me present something like what I just told you about the notes revealed yesterday about General Flynn and the potential culpability of Joe Biden, call me, challenge it. Let's have it out. You got to listen. You got to put the country first. You must put America first. Victor Davis Hanson wrote a great piece for townhall.com that said that the old 2020 election was supposed to be about a lot of familiar issues. It's not anymore. I mean, the fact is that for all of 2019 and 2020, Democrats claimed that calm overseas would return a Biden victory. Trump opponents saw the November election as a return to Washington normalcy. No more fights with the media, no more paranoia of a deep state. Trump's base had seen the November election as the last chance to drain the federal swamp of careerists, apparatchiks, corporate flunkies, various grifters. All that conundrum is all ancient history. For nearly a month now, Victor Davis Hanson writes, the nation has been consumed by massive protests and chronic riots, looting, and arson. The catalyst for the demonstrations, the violent and wrongful death of an African-American man, George Floyd, while in the custody of Minneapolis police, is itself fading from connections with the upheavals. Statues are toppled, names are abruptly changed, careers are canceled, police are both reviled and walking off the job. Retired generals are no longer seen as conservative traditionalists, but radicals themselves who dare to take on the commander-in-chief. Downtown Seattle's no longer in control of the city government. The internet is aflame with self-appointed sleuths, he writes. They scour hours of video, millions of words, searching for an indiscreet past remark as fodder to take out a political opponent, a rival for a job or a personal enemy. The people's energy, tranquilized by a 2-month national quarantine, has suddenly exploded in both massive protests and silent seething at the lawlessness. I like that, silent seething at the lawlessness. Victor Davis Hanson says the result is that for good or evil, the 2020 election is no longer really about Biden or Trump, Democrat or Republican, progressive and conservative agendas. No, it's now about America, as it has been before May of 2020. Always flawed, but constantly improving, not perfect, but far better than alternatives, and what has now followed. Much of America believes, he writes, that America is racist, cruel, and incapable of self-correction of its so-called original sins, without a radical erasure of much of its past history, much of its past traditions, customs. It sees occasional violence as a necessary stimulant of long overdue change. Did you hear my caller yesterday, Cedric, who said that the burning down of the Wendy's in Atlanta was a good statement? Victor Davis Hanson says, racism, the protesting left believes, is in the American DNA. It finally requires massive cutting, chemotherapy, and radiation, treatment that deservedly will sicken and may even kill the host. The other half of the country will vote to preserve what is under attack. They feel that the dreamy world of the demonstrators and rioters is an Orwellian vision far worse than the present reality that they are protesting. America, in their view, is the world's only large, successful, multiracial democracy. It is the dream destination of the world's immigrants, precisely because its ancient institutions adapt and change for the better, but only if they are preserved and allowed to work. Victor Davis Hanson concludes by saying the angry and the demonstrating are loud, they're visible, their opponents are angry and quiet. The election will reveal not just who is more numerous, but sadly, he says, who is the angriest. We'll post his column at MikeOnline.com, Victor Davis Hanson at townhall.com. Our number is 800-655-Mike. It's great having you along for the ride here on the Mike Gallagher Show.